Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to see everyone here. Welcome, welcome to today's Inclusive Learning Circle series, which is fostering synergy between UDL, AT, and AAC. Today, we are focusing on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, and learner agency. And actually, today is going to be our very last session of the 24-25 school year. So we're excited you're all here. If you would, there is a tiny URL and a QR code that will take you to the home base document, where you can find all kinds of resources and slides. If you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat at any time. And we're going to dive on in here. We're so excited you're here today. As agents of your own learning, we really do encourage you to consider what you need during this webinar. I know it is a virtual webinar, so there's some natural barriers that occur there, but really think about how your space can best support your engagement today. Do you need a snack? Do you need a coffee? Do you need a little smoothie, water? Anything like that, please do help yourself, get yourself settled. Maybe you need a fidget, and then consider what's the best way for you to perceive and understand this. I know a lot of this is in our hands because we're presenting, but if you want to have the slides up separately so you can follow along, great. If you want to be digging into the resources while we're talking, go ahead and do that. And then think a little bit about your preferences for note-taking or sharing and answering questions. If today you decide you're someone that's going to just be blowing up the chat and engaging, awesome. We're so excited. And you're welcome to react and be involved, however works best for you. But if today you're feeling like you just kind of want to sit and absorb information, that absolutely works too. So we're just going to invite you to just consider what you need for this hour-ish webinar. We're going to take a little minute to introduce ourselves today. My name is Emily Desjardins. I'm the UDL content lead through Open Access. And with me is the lovely Marcy Zapegno. And Marcy Zapegno is from the Humboldt County Office of Education. She is a UDL regional lead. And, Humboldt County Office of Education is one of Open Access's partners. And so we get to do a lot of things together. And I'm so excited to have Marcy here with me. She is, oops, sorry, I bumped. She is the program manager in the Prevention and Intervention Services Office within Humboldt County Office of Education. So thank you so much for being with me today, Marcy. For those of you who have been within our inclusive learning circles since last August, I'm sure you know who Open Access is, but for any of you who are new to us, I'm going to do just a quick overview. We are one of the special education resource leads within the statewide system of supports, and we are really founded on the belief that with access to quality instruction, all students can engage, they can actively participate, and they can learn within inclusive settings. And we believe what makes that really possible is when schools and districts can integrate universal design for learning, assistive technology, and AAC. And so we focus on providing professional development to schools and districts to really help in all three of those areas. Our website is linked on the home base document as well as in this slide, and we have a little one-pager about the services we offer. Please feel free to dive into that and email with any questions at all. We are a very small but mighty team, we like to say. We have 2 coordinators, Lori and Leah, and 3 content lead specialists. Coming very soon in the fall, we have our new AT content lead specialist, and we're excited to welcome her in the fall. And then we also have our wonderful administrative support and our assistant superintendent. We really, really do our very best to make our presentations as accessible as possible. We really try to have those simple backgrounds and high contrast text with shortened links, alt text for images, and really have some opportunities for participation and feedback, and provide lots of opportunities for examples and non-examples. But if you ever feel like there's something we could do to make things more accessible, do please feel free to reach out. We really want to encourage your participation today. Feel free to use the reactions, answer those questions, or ask any questions in the Q&A. We are happy to support all of those. If there are any questions that we maybe don't have time to answer here, or we need to do a little more research on, we will absolutely post those on the home base document and make sure we answer those. So if you feel like your question wasn't answered, It will be on the home base in the next couple of days. We're not really going to do any whiteboards or polls today, but we are going to have a Padlet for some collaboration in a little bit later. And as a reminder, we do have that home base document. And Lori's been doing an amazing job dropping that into the chat. So if you follow that, or you're welcome to use the tiny URL or the QR code.
All right. Well, so excited to have you all here, and we're going to start today with an inclusive welcome. And so for today's inclusive welcome, we want to encourage you to think back to your own education or your own learning experiences. So it could be whether it was in the classroom or learning a new skill, and then be thinking about that and choose one of these questions. So thinking of a time when you felt truly engaged and in control of your own learning, what made that experience different? Or what does it feel like when your ideas or interests are part of the learning process? So we want to spend a minute reflecting, and then go ahead and add your answers to the chat. And we'd love to hear from you. You can also share aloud or raise your hand, and we can unmute if the webinar allows for that. I'm not sure, Emily, if we have that, or if we only have strictly chat capabilities for this one.
Yeah, we can. If you raise your hand, we can click it and allow you to talk. So I know that's kind of a little silly, but we can do that.
Okay, great. I'll give you a moment to reflect, and then again, you can raise your hand or answer one of these questions in the chat. Okay, I see one. Thank you, Janelle. It makes me feel a part of the group and cared for, that my voice is heard. I have less stress, so I can focus on the task, not how to access it. Great, thank you. And then Gloria, when my ideas are part of the learning process, I feel part of the team, like my voice is being heard, like my ideas are valuable. So really about the importance of voice in the process. Thank you. And then I think when truly engaged, you'll feel that the teacher's experience or descriptions are relatable and applicable to your work immediately. Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Okay, so we feel free to keep, if things come up for you, keep adding that into the chat, and we'll keep an eye on the chat, and we're going to keep moving on. So for today's objectives, we would like for you to be able to identify key characteristics of learner agency through personal reflection and collaborative exploration. And then to understand how the principles of universal design for learning support the development of learner agency across diverse learning environments, and to explore real-world examples of learner agency in the classroom practice to envision practical strategies that promote ownership, voice, and choice. And we're going to show you some of those examples later in the presentation. So as we move through today centered around UDL and learner agency, we're going to focus on the shift from expert learner to learner agency. And so an overview of what learner agency is, how learner agency for students can actually really support teachers and remove barriers, especially within student engagement and behavior. And finally, we will share some examples of learner agency and action in the classroom. So first, to start out, what is learner agency? Learner agency refers to the ability of students to take ownership of their learning, make choices, and have a voice in the educational process. So really, a lot of what people put in the chat for our inclusive welcome really was centered around this idea, importance of learner agency and the importance of having a voice. So last July in 2024, the UDL guidelines were updated to 3.0 guidelines were released at that time. And so we've discussed these updates in previous inclusive learning circles and webinars. So we're not going to go into great detail about this, but we're going to just share a brief overview. So included in the update of the 3.0 guidelines, there is enhanced representation of diversity. And that's really that encouragement to being authentic and to represent a variety of perspectives and identities and learning materials to create an inclusive environment for all students. So that's the focus for that enhanced representation of diversity. And then moving to increased focus on emotional regulation. Increased focus on emotional engagement. It's really about that acknowledgement of the role of emotions in the learning and promoting strategy that really nurture students' emotional well-being and their connections to the learning community. And then the third bullet of the collaboration and collective learning, it's really emphasis on fostering collaboration and interdependence among learners, enhancing that sense of community and support within the classroom. And then the last bullet with addressing biases in educational practices, that's really centered on this commitment to recognizing and addressing biases in learning environments and materials and ensuring the equity and respect for all learners, identities, and backgrounds. So finally, the biggest change was the shift in the ultimate goal of UDL from expert learner, so that's what it was in the previous guidelines, to learner agency. And one of the primary reasons for this shift from expert learner to learner agency is really the very word expert carries a lot of bias within it. Because when you think about the word expert, it's like a way to achieve a goal or a way that we need to be achieve, how are we going to achieve that task? Rather than the many amazing ways that we can go about achieving and getting to our goal. So the guidelines now really focus on empowering students to take control of their learning through choice and autonomy and fostering that sense of ownership and engagement. So therefore that shift from expert learner to learner agency. So when we look at comparing expert learner and learner agency, we can look at a variety of reasons that the language is powerful and important. So when we talk about expert learners, there's a focus on, again, acquiring those essential knowledge or skills, which is really often set or planned by educators. And the shift of language to learner agency encourages teachers to empower students to take ownership of their learning paths. So in order for them to make their own choices based on what is they're looking at their own interests, what their strengths are, and to empower them to set learning goals for themselves, and to also have that reflection along the way of what that learning process was. So the language of expert learners can often exclude diverse perspectives, whereas learner agency allows really for that opportunity to embrace and celebrate diversity, allowing students to bring their unique abilities into the learning community. So again, looking at this comparison of expert learner to learner agency, just some other highlights. We want to reminder that we're really comparing the language around the goal of expert learner and learner agency. So the guidelines themselves have remained very true to their core purpose, but now have a lot greater focus on what that learner focus is within the classroom environment. And when you think about learner agency, it really promotes this flexibility with multiple means of engagement. It also really focuses on how are we representing, how are they able to express and focus on removing barriers. It also, with the term shifting to learner agency, it really focuses on encouraging the collaborative experiences within the classroom, creating that sense of community and shared responsibility. So when we think about this shared responsibility and community, it can really help learners to feel confident and valued because they have something to bring to the table. And the classroom requires them to be that essential part of the community.
Awesome, thank you. I want to note Estrella just added to the chat, and I want to highlight it because I think it was a great comment. She said, I think when I was in grad school and I did a presentation about gay rights, it was a very different because the experience made me feel like it was something that others should be more aware of, and it was controversial. And I also learned it was something I could apply towards awareness to others. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I know we've all seen these images before, right? But I want to take a look at them with the framework of thinking about universal design for learning and really thinking about learner agency as our goal here. So in this first picture, we see everyone has the same, regardless of their need. I think for the most part, I hope we've moved away from this as a rigid all the time thing. In that second picture, we see that all children have what they need exactly to see across the fence. And I would say what we're presuming when we're looking at this is that teacher has planned that. The teacher is like, oh, let me give you these stools so that you can see over this fence. I'm going to help you out. When we're looking at this third picture, I think what's really important to note is that somebody has removed the barrier of the fence. And so all of these children can see through to the field. Now, some of them have a slightly obstructed view and they might have to be peeking through a hole. Some can see over, but they all can access the field. They can see. Might be slightly obstructed, but they all can see. And then off to the side, they have a tool or support that they can choose to access if they need it. So I think this idea of really empowering our learners by making things as accessible as possible, but then also providing tools that allow our students to access even more or to engage in the learning in a slightly different way or a more impactful way because that tool is available for them, but making it their choice and empowering them to have to really think about what they need as a learner is so important. And so, agency with our students really comes from our learners knowing themselves and specifically knowing what engages them, what tools help them perceive and understand, and then how to organize and communicate their learning. And I think we end up getting students who have much, much deeper learning abilities when you have to kind of advocate for yourself and think about what your needs are. It's a very different learning experience than being a very good rule follower, which I think I was a pretty good rule follower growing up, and I did what I was told. Whether I understood what to do or not, I was a really good rule follower. But I don't know that I truly understand who I was as a learner. I know that didn't understand who I was as a learner or what I needed at all. But we really find that people who have experienced learner agency throughout their educational career, or even when they experience learner agency, they really develop some amazing skills. They're very empowered to be able to collaborate with their peers. They really establish that grit and perseverance. And the learner agency and that growth mindset are very tied together because when we're empowering our learners to be able to make their own decisions about learning, and we're really encouraging them to problem solve, that growth mindset piece comes in quite a bit as well. They have the opportunity to become really, really creative and think critically. And of all of these, which are fabulous skills, I think the most important is really developing that joy for learning. I mean, we want all of our students to become lifelong learners. And so I think when they're really empowered to have that agency, they have so much more possibility for really developing a joy for learning. So sometimes when we're talking about changing our instructional strategies, I think it can feel really overwhelming or feel like one more thing to do. Like, I have so many other things to think about. I can't think about agency as well. But as we're talking about learner agency, I really want to acknowledge that when we can help increase our agency for our students, a lot of the instructional barriers that our teachers are facing can be removed. And so when we're increasing our learner agency, the planning, the instructional load shifts a little bit. And then maybe we're planning a little bit more ahead of time in how we organize our lesson. But then in the moment of a lesson, our classroom management decreases significantly because our learners are taking over for this lesson. And so we really see a lot of things. Increase student engagement, when they feel empowered and have ownership over their learning, they're much more likely to engage meaningfully with the content. You see, a real a decreased likelihood of those disruptive behaviors because people are more engaged. Your students are more engaged in what they're doing. We see a reduced need for differentiation because they are empowered to really self-regulate and choose what tools they need to support their learning or to ask for what they need. And so if we have tools available that our students can choose from, or if we have a variety of ways for them to show how they're learning and they get to be empowered to make those choices, you see a lot of those, a reduced need for that differentiation as well. When we can create opportunities for our students to collaborate in this with which is so often connected with that learner agency is, empowering our students to work collaboratively together. We can really see deeper connections between our peers. We see peer teaching happen quite often, and just really kind of understanding what each student within their group brings to the table and being able to see the strengths within their classmates that might not have always looked like strengths because they haven't had the opportunity to be able to present material in different ways or to show their learning in different ways. And then it really does foster that sense of community as well, too, when there's just a clear ownership within students in their learning environment. So I want to share just some general examples of what learner agency can look like in classrooms. And then I will go into some specifics that one of our showcase sites is really doing to help their students feel empowered and have agency over their learning. So some general examples are really, access to materials around the classroom. This is one that, especially when we're thinking about our preschool, TK, kinder, first grade, that instead of having materials passed out or delivered to students, but rather having clear structures within the classroom where all of your materials are kept, and then empowering students to say, okay, consider what we need right now. Are we doing crayons? Colored pencils or markers? Think about what you need and then go make your choice. Those small details of allowing students to know where materials are, access themselves, and make choices. I think that's one of the great first steps to really thinking about themselves as a learner and what they need or what choices they want to make. Having a lot of choice in where students sit, the agency of, do I want to work with a peer? Do I want to work independently? Do I want to sit at a table? Do I want to sit at the carpet? Do I want to sit at a desk? It's a small choice, but it is a choice regarding learning, and I think it can be extremely empowering for our students. There's a lot of ways that we can provide choice for our students, but the way we're seating, what kind of tool that students are using, the way that they choose to receive their information. I was in a classroom once, and I went to two separate classrooms within a couple-minute period during a walkthrough. They were both first grade classrooms. They were both doing identical lessons, and they were both phonics lessons. One classroom had students looking at a board, a screen, and they were blending sounds. It was a phonics lesson. And they're mostly engaged, a couple of wiggle worms in the back, but mostly engaged. And in the next room, identical lesson, but the teacher had printed out the phonics lesson or the phonics words. And so every student had a copy of the phonics words in front of them. And they were sitting in partners and they had their finger on the words and they were blending each word. Identical lessons. And in that second room, having that piece of paper in front of them and that buddy next to them, 100% engaged, sounding out all the words. And it was interesting because even their voices were much louder. They were clearly much more excited about this phonics lesson and participating more. And so I think sometimes when we can have another way for our students to perceive the information, sometimes that helps kind of build that engagement, or having a peer buddy if they wanted to. And when our students have the opportunities to choose how they want to work, either collaboratively with a peer, in a group, or independently, sometimes that can be a really nice way to have choice and really help learners consider, like, how am I feeling right now? You know what? I am just not interested in socially interacting, but right now I'm feeling okay to sit and read by myself and work independently. But that thought of having choice can oftentimes help students really consider what their own needs are and become more socially, emotionally aware of themselves. So all of these things can really can really help build agency in class. I'm trying to think what else I'm missing. Oh, students creating their own learning goals. Oh my gosh, that can be so fantastic. Students being provided with time to reflect in their learning, and then also again working with those peers to collaborate. So I want to make sure we have a little bit of time. We've been talking a lot. Marcy and I have been just chatting away, but I want to make sure we have time to be able to get your thoughts and opinions on all of this and just hear things that are going well for you as well. So I want us to think a little bit about our own learner agency practices, own life experience. So we have a Padlet here. We have created, or there are some things in here already that you can react to, you can make comments on, or you can create your own Padlet submission as well. For those of you who have never used Padlet before, down below here is this plus button. And if you want, you can create a colored post-it note. You can type something and it will post anything you want, just a note. But if you want to get fancy about it, there's all kinds of things you can do here. You can create a poll, you can draw a picture, and post that. You can search for an image. You can do an audio recorder, a video recorder, so many fun things you can do. So you're welcome to play around with that and post. But the questions that I want to pose really, and you can think of these three questions, or you can think of your own that is learner agency related. What is one strategy that you're already using to empower your students to take ownership of your learning? Or if you're an instructional leader, maybe what's a way that the teachers at your school are empowered to make decisions and choices that might otherwise belong to an instructional leader? What is another strategy you might add or something you might change in order to increase agency? Or what was your own experience with learner agency? This could be at any stage of your educational career, elementary, middle, high school, college. What was your experience? And if you did have a lot of agency, was it something that was positive for you or more challenging? I have heard from people before, I didn't have a lot of agency, but when I had it, I just panicked because all of a sudden I had to make a choice and I know how I learned best. So I didn't want to make the choice. I just wanted someone to tell me what to do. So please feel free to react or add any posts to this. And if it's easier and you'd prefer to just use the chat, please feel free to do that as well. Whatever works best for you as we're reflecting on this. I think sometimes I have to refresh too. I love this. The Passionate Salmon. I don't know how Padlet comes up with these names, but I love it. The Passionate Salmon has said, it seemed that whenever agency was allowed, it was always within a group project format, which I absolutely hated. Yeah, I think that's really understandable. And that's such a good way to think about when we're working with our students, kind of allowing that opportunity. If you want to work by yourself, that is a-okay. That's a great way to add agency is who are you working with and how are you working? Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can definitely understand that. I had very mixed feelings about group work. Kind of depended on the group and who was doing what, it was kind of a rocky relationship with group projects growing up, I think, for me. Mm. I'm going to give this a minute as this is kind of, people seem to be still adding to it. But again, feel free to add into the chat as well. And I'm going to go back to this and then I will come back again. So I want to share some unique examples. Redwood Prep is one of the open access showcase sites. For those of you who are not familiar, we are in the process of developing showcase sites across the state of California, and our goal with these is to give people a place to visit UDL in action. At the moment, we have a showcase site in Humboldt County, in Sacramento County, and then down in Morongo, in 29 Palms. And so these three sites, we have a couple more that are up and coming and still in their training process and will be opening doors over the next couple of years. But if you live in nearby any of these areas and you're interested in seeing UDL in action, we do have on our website showcase site interest forms. And so if you're interested in visiting one of those sites, you can fill out where you're located, what grade you teach, what subject you teach, and we will do our best to pair you with a location nearest to you that fits your desired observation location. Um, but Redwood Prep is one of our showcase sites in Humboldt County, and I just want to share a few things that they're doing that I think are fairly unique when it comes to learner agency. One of the first things that absolutely blew my mind is I spoke with both the director and also the second grade teacher, and both of them said, yeah, I had students on my interview panel. And I thought, wow, that is incredible. And what a powerful thing to allow students to be able to ask questions and help decide. And they actually were before, I guess, in the process when they do this, the students give their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, and then there is a discussion that doesn't necessarily include the students, but I think it is so powerful that they are on that committee and they have a voice. And when it is a teacher, it's always a student that will be in the teacher's class. And so, like, okay, if we're looking for the fourth grade teacher, this would be in next year's fourth grade class, which I think is amazing. Um, when I visited this site this last fall, was it this fall? Yeah, in the fall. I was greeted with a student-led tour, which I thought was just the most adorable and fabulous thing ever. And you could really see the pride that these students had in their school. They were so excited to show me everything that brought them joy on site and to let me ask questions, and they were just you could see how much it empowered them. They have cafeteria voting, and so the person that runs the cafeteria allows students to vote on any favorites that they would like to see. And so I think when Marcy and I were there together, and was it ramen day that they had? I'm trying to remember what it was, but I think the students had voted on ramen, and so everyone was very excited about that. And it was like a new feature in the cafeteria. I love it. And then there's actually their site leadership or their student leadership is actually involved in site decision making. And there's an org chart that I will share in a minute. Um, there's a lot of focus on project-based learning. Which inherently has a lot of learner agency in it because you're really looking at, okay, this is a project, we're going to create this thing. How are we going to do it? What are the steps to it? And then being able to work as a team or independently to be able to solve those. And so at the top, you'll see they're working on actually carving wooden spoons. And then down below is a group project. And then they also had a weaving project as well. And there's actually a lot of opportunities for mixed age groups because they do a lot of this project-based learning with their peer buddies that are, sixth grade and third grade. And so being able to learn from peers and being able for those older peers to be able to shine as experts for these younger peers, there's so much empowerment that goes into that. The TK teacher on campus has started something called TK Forest Fridays. Now, being in Humboldt County, they do have the great fortune of being in the redwoods, so they don't have to go far to be in the forest. I know that's not necessarily an experience everyone can have, but being in nature is definitely something, even if it's at a park, or so there's so many different ways to do this. But she wrote a wonderful article actually about her experience of creating this Forest Fridays and kind of how much planning she originally put into it, and then realized that it was actually a lot more effective to kind of just be posing questions and allow for that exploration. But it's a fantastic article, and we have linked it in the home base if you want to check it out when you're digging a little deeper later on. There's so many great activities they do there, really making all kinds of mud creations, building shelter, lots of nature play, and community awareness. And there's a quote from Krista from the article and the TK teacher, and I think I love it. Letting go of perfect lessons, my own curiosity and joy are really gifts to students. And I love that because she's modeling that curiosity, that joy, that exploration, and that ripple effect for students kind of empowers them to be able to do it themselves. Redwood Prep, kinder through sixth grade, also gets to do STEAM time. and they have about 40 minutes. I think it's once or twice a week. There is someone from Redwood Prep on this webinar. I saw her join. So Amy, you can say in the comments if I get any of this information wrong, please. But they have all kinds of project-based learning that's built into STEAM as well, kind of separately. And on the left, you'll see the sixth grade challenge. They were making Roman aqueducts, create an aqueduct that can transmit water from one source to at least 3 different locations. The design must not have any leaks. And then all the materials available, and then the date in which they'll be testing these. So, such a fantastic way for them to get really creative and make something. And kind of, I do believe they have opportunities to work in a group or independently. But it's so project based and really allows these open-ended questions and plans and allows for them to kind of dig deep in a way that works for them. I have an example here of a 6th grade classroom video. They are doing a jigsaw activity. And so I'm going to play the video in a second, but what I really want to share is the amazing flexible seating options. Okay, this is typical. This is every single class at Redwood Prep has amazing flexible seating. What I really want to highlight is it's not super fancy. Like they don't have this enormous budget where they go out and buy all this fancy new material. But I mean, they have said themselves, it's garage sales, thrift stores, what they can find. They kind of put it together and it's all about how you arrange it and use it. So I will highlight that as we're watching. But within this jigsaw activity, you know, there's collaborative learning because students are working in their small groups in order to become experts, even though we don't love that word, that's okay, on a specific piece of a larger topic. And then these expert groups are going to come meet together so they can talk about their same topic and discuss, master that material. Then they go back to their jigsaw groups where they kind of teach their subtopic to their peer. And so really kind of allows that collaboration and allows them to be able to shine and share, and a great way to be able to learn material as well. So I'm going to play this short video.
Over time, flutes became a popular part of the lives of the Chinese, from the common people to the emperor himself. In fact, the 6th century Buddhists revealed Taoism,
Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, and Mongolia.
And 17.5, that's how much of the Chinese population back then was in the Han Dynasty. That was almost 1.4 billion.
Why Buddhism is practiced? The reason Buddhism is practiced is I believe in rebirth, which is where you get reincarnated as a...
Awesome. I love that one.
over time,
So like we talked about, this there really is a shared leadership in the student council. They absolutely have a vote in decisions. They have a voice. And it's like their director likes to say, they're not the only voice, but they do have a voice, which I think is really important and empowering. That they're even listed in this, I think is fabulous. Finally, I want to share a short video of the TK morning meeting. So I did get to see this in person and it was absolutely stinking adorable. And so every TK student, there's a question of the day, and it usually has something to do with, you know, how they're feeling in the day or how yesterday was for them, or some sort of a connection question about their own life, their own experience, their own day, something they want to do for the day. They do have the option to skip for the day, or they can answer the question. And as you'll see, every single child gets greeted by name, not only by their teacher, but every child in the group. What I think is amazing about this is every single child has the opportunity to speak. Every child has the opportunity to look each other in the eyes. They're practicing so many skills here, but they're also very empowered. And this whole thing, I think start to finish, is less than 10 minutes. I mean, she really has it down to this wonderful science where it is this fabulous connection every morning, and yet also it's not a half a day, and there's not a lot of wiggle worms either. There are wiggle worms, but a very natural, normal wiggle worms, and you'll see she doesn't call them out either. She just kind of rolls with it, and it's not disruptive. It's just the flow, which I think is lovely. So, what I think is so special here is they do have so much voice. They have agency in whether they respond or don't respond. However, they all get to feel part of that community and that group.
Good morning, Miss Stephanie.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Coco.
Looks like it's a court rock. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bennett.
Do you want to give it to Mrs. Drake? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mrs. Drake.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Huxley.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Brooks.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bex.
How does this go in the dark?
We'll have to see. I don't know.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Jojo.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Logan.
Probably glows in the dark with the gems or something. No, they don't with the gems. The paint. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bria.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Libby.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Ava.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Savannah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mrs. Leo.
Yes, Bennett.
How about we pass it around again and we can turn the lights off and we can pass it around and see how it glows.
I have to add on to that. I like how you're thinking. How about if we pass it back around and you tell us what you did on break? And then when we've all done it, we'll turn the lights off and see what we can see. You went somewhere. You went on a big trip during break. All right. Are you ready to tell us? Maybe you just stayed home with your family. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Is that super fun? Yeah. All right, Ava.
I had a play date with sports.
You did. Where did you go?
I went to my house and then we went to a park with Tegan.
I love that. I realized there was one other thing I didn't mention before she starts this part. There is somebody every day, it's a different person's job to be the breath chooser. And they get to do kind of a mindful breathing to get them centered and ready for circle time. And she does structure the day so that she starts with exploration. So they're kind of doing centers and exploring, and then they come to the floor. So it's not the very, very first thing they do, but she has them choose. They have a menu of all the different breathing options they can choose. And I think the one that I saw was rain breathing, and it was like, and it was adorable and fabulous. So I love that extra bit of agency that everyone gets to choose that as well. Sorry about that. So we have lots of resources for you to be able to dig deeper, but I want to pause and see if there's any questions or any reflections or things that anybody wants to share about anything they saw or anything that they have tried, or ways that learner agency has worked well in your classroom, or maybe barriers you've experienced when trying to add more learner agency. We're here for all of it. I'm going to kind of pause and give you a second to think about questions or reflections. But as you're thinking, I'm also going to share some digging deeper resources as well. So we have added these all onto the home base document, but there are some things to read, there's some things to watch, and a few things to explore. The exploration resource is really about building learner agency through helping our learners set their own goals and provide peer feedback to one another. Great way to add some agency into the classroom. The videos are learner agency and reading workshops and learner-centered environment, as well as learner agency in the classroom. They're pretty short videos. There's several things to read. I want to highlight the TK Forest Friday article that was written by the Redwood Prep teacher about her experience planning Forest Fridays. There's a blog post about my very first time visiting Redwood Prep and just all the things that I saw there, because it's a real part of their environment and it's fabulous. And then a couple of articles about how students can set academic goals, and then the importance of really that positive impact on lifelong learner agency. And then I also want to make sure I highlight that we do have our flyer ready to go for next year's Inclusive Learning Circle. It is located on our home base document, but we will absolutely put it in the chat. Oh, Lori's on it. Thank you, Lori. And so we're ready to roll for next year. Next year, we'll really be highlighting teachers that are implementing UDL for the UDL portion of this series. So if you are a teacher implementing UDL and you want to share a way that you really build engagement, representation, or action and expression, please do reach out to me, because I would love to collaborate with you on working on that together. As always, please do follow us on social media. We do post regularly, and also, if you have a story about implementing UDL that you want to share, feel free to reach out to us, and we would love to highlight you on our social media as well. And now I'll go back to our questions and answers as well.
I wanted to add to that.
Yes.
Well, first, I want to put in the chat. I like the morning meeting video because it gives the kids time to greet and share their morning. It also a great idea that TK do things like this because it's good practice for social skills. Absolutely. There's so many things that they're learning, not only academics, but building that community and practicing those social skills. I wanted to share, just to really lift up this work that you're already all doing. We had a kind of end of the year collaboration with a lot of educators who went through our UDL training. And when we went around and we shared like, what was a highlight? And one person shared that a highlight was that, like, before going through the UDL training, that all the things that they're already doing that were UDL, but they just didn't have a name for it. And so I just really want to acknowledge that you already are incorporating so many things, and we're focused today on learner agency. And so think about all the things that you're already doing that and really enhance and build on that learner agency in your classrooms or whatever role you have within the education environment. And then we always think about what's plus one. So even whether it's those resources or just what's one more thing, what's one thing that you can do to increase that learner agency.
I love that. Great point, Marcy. I'm going to go back to our Padlet see if we have any anybody add anything else to this. And it's okay if not too. Got a couple likes around here too, which is awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so very much for being here. We appreciate all your participation over the entire Inclusive Learning Circle series, and we are very excited to dive into next year's ILC. Feel free to reach out with any questions at all. Our contact information is located on the home base document. Yeah, and I know this group we might see in other places over the summer, but if we don't see you, have a fabulous summer, and I hope you get to be rested and rejuvenated and have the perfect balance of adventure, exploration, and relaxation. Whatever that perfect balance is for you, I suppose. All right. Thank you guys so very, very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for being here.